My name is Dr. Alessia Sharma, and this story is about the day my life's work, a project my family called my pathetic little hobby, brought a $10 billion corporate giant to its knees. For my entire life, in the world of the Sharma family, there were only two acceptable paths to success: law or finance. My brother, Rohan, chose law and became the golden son. I chose science, and in their eyes, I became the family's greatest failure. What they never understood is that being underestimated can be the most powerful weapon you have. In less than an hour, a press release is going live that will announce to the entire world that my small, underfunded lab has perfected a technology my brother's behemoth company has spent a decade and hundreds of millions of dollars trying to create. And the best part? I've already given it away to the world for free. Before I dive into the story of how my passion for plants turned into the sweetest, most unexpected revenge, I'd love to know where you all are watching from today. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you've ever had someone doubt your dreams or tell you that your passion was worthless, go ahead and hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. And for all the new viewers here, make sure you subscribe because this is a community for people who know what it's like to have to prove everyone wrong. To understand the silence that is about to fall in my brother's boardroom, you have to understand the noise I grew up in. It was a noise of expectation, a constant, humming pressure that vibrated through the very walls of our pristine suburban home. My father, Vikram Sharma, was a man carved from ambition and tailored suits. He was a partner at a prestigious investment firm, a man who saw the world as a complex series of transactions. Value was numerical, success was a leaderboard, and emotion was an unfortunate, inefficient byproduct of being human. My mother, Meera, was his loyal second-in-command, a woman whose own dreams had been neatly folded and put away long ago, replaced by the all-consuming project of managing the family's image and nurturing her husband's legacy through her children. And then there was Rohan, my older brother. From the moment he could speak, it was clear he was cast in my father's image. He was sharp, articulate, and possessed a brand of effortless charisma that made people want to agree with him. He was destined for greatness, and our family life was the carefully managed incubator for that destiny. I remember one specific dinner when I was 10 years old. The heavy scent of cardamom and my mother's rosewater pudding filled the air, but the atmosphere was thick with something else. It was judgment night, an unspoken ritual. Rohan, then 12, had just won the regional middle school debate championship. He placed his gleaming gold-painted trophy right in the center of the mahogany dining table, where it caught the light of the crystal chandelier. My father picked it up, weighing it in his hand as if it were a bar of solid gold. A slow, proud smile spread across his face. "This, Rohan," he said, his voice resonating with deep satisfaction, "this is a weapon. The ability to argue, to persuade, to dominate a room with nothing but your words. That is real power. You will make a formidable lawyer." My mother beamed, her eyes shining. "We're so proud of you. Our brilliant boy." Rohan soaked it in, his posture straightening. He was already learning the language of victory. Then it was my turn. My own victory felt small and grubby in comparison. I had won first place at the city's science fair. My project was on the nitrogen-fixing properties of clover in depleted soil. I had spent weeks in the garden, my hands perpetually stained with earth, meticulously documenting the growth of pea plants in different soil compositions. I didn't have a trophy, just a blue ribbon and a certificate signed by the mayor. I pushed it tentatively across the table. My father glanced at it, his eyes barely registering the words. He didn't pick it up. "Alessia, that's nice," he said, the word nice landing with the dull thud of a consolation prize. "But your mother tells me you ruined 2 pairs of trousers digging in the mud. Science is messy. It's uncertain. Law, finance, these are clean. They are precise. They build empires." He then turned back to Rohan, and the conversation moved on to which law schools were the best, leaving my blue ribbon sitting on the polished wood like an uninvited guest. In that moment, I felt a hot sting of shame. My passion was messy. My victory was nice. Rohan's was a weapon. The lines were drawn. He was building an empire. I was just playing in the dirt. This dynamic only intensified as we grew older. Every family gathering, every holiday, became a showcase for Rohan's achievements. His high school valedictorian speech, his acceptance into a top-tier university's pre-law program, his summer internship at a judge's office. Each success was another brick in the monument they were building to him. My own accomplishments in the world of biology were met with a kind of baffled politeness. It was as if I were describing a fascinating but ultimately irrelevant hobby, like building ships in a bottle. During one particularly galling Christmas dinner, when I was a senior in high school, my uncle asked me what I planned to study in college. I excitedly told him I was applying to programs in molecular botany and genetics. A hush fell over the table. My father cleared his throat, a sound he made when he was deeply uncomfortable. Rohan, ever the smooth operator, jumped in with a patronizing chuckle. "She's always loved her little plants," he said, ruffling my hair as if I were still a child. "We're hoping she'll grow out of it and get a sensible degree. Maybe an MBA? She's good with numbers when she tries." The implication was clear. My dreams were childish, something to be outgrown. Sensible meant profitable. Sensible meant something they could brag about. Botany was, to them, fundamentally insensible. There was one time I thought I might have broken through. In my junior year of high school, I was a finalist in a national science competition for developing a simple, algae-based water purification system for use in rural areas. It was a precursor to the work I do now, a first step on my path. The prize was a significant scholarship. For this, I actually had to fly to a different city. Rohan was home from college for the weekend. I was packing my small suitcase, my presentation notes spread all over my bed, when he walked into my room. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. "Still trying to save the world with pond scum, little sis?" he asked. I ignored him, focusing on folding a blouse. "It's a viable system," I said, my voice tighter than I wanted. "It could help a lot of people." He laughed, a short, sharp bark. "People don't want help, Alessia. They want products. They want to buy a solution, not grow one in a bucket. You're thinking like a charity." "Dad's right. You need to think like a businesswoman." He then picked up one of my diagrams. "This is all very noble," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But nobility doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't earn respect." The night before I left, I overheard him talking to my father in the study. "It's a phase," Rohan said confidently. "She'll get a taste of the real world, see how little this stuff pays, and she'll come around." They weren't just dismissive. They were actively betting on my failure, seeing it as an inevitable and necessary course correction. When I made the final decision to major in botany at university, the reaction was not explosive anger, but a cold, heavy blanket of disappointment. I sat my parents down in the same living room where they had celebrated Rohan's law school acceptance with champagne. I explained my choice, my voice filled with a passion I hoped they would finally see. I spoke of the beauty of genetic expression, the silent, powerful intelligence of the plant kingdom, the potential to solve real-world problems like famine and drought. When I finished, there was a long silence. My father stared into the empty fireplace. "A doctor of dirt," he finally said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "That's what you want to be? After all the investment we've made in your education, you choose to be a doctor of dirt? Alessia, be serious. This is your life, not a field trip." My mother just wrung her hands. "But what will you do with it, darling? Will you be a gardener?" The chasm between my world and theirs had never felt so vast. They couldn't see the science, the complexity, the potential. All they saw was soil and leaves, a step down on the social ladder they had so desperately tried to climb. University was both a refuge and a confirmation. It was a place where my passion was not just accepted, but celebrated. It was there I met Dr. Ben Carter. Ben was a legend in the botany department, a semi-retired professor with a mind like a steel trap and a heart of pure gold. He had a wild mane of white hair, wore Birkenstocks even in the winter, and saw the world not in dollars and cents, but in ecosystems and symbiotic relationships. He became my mentor, my champion. He saw the fire in me that my family tried so hard to extinguish. I spent hours in his office, surrounded by stacks of books and the earthy smell of drying plant samples. He was the one who first told me, "Alessia, your family, they're like monoculture farmers. They only see value in one crop. It's profitable, sure, but it's vulnerable. A single blight can wipe it all out. What you're doing, studying diversity, resilience, that's where the real strength is. Don't you ever let them grind you down. What you're doing matters more than they can possibly comprehend." His words were a lifeline. He was the father figure I needed, one who valued knowledge over status and impact over income. He saw my work not as a hobby, but as a calling. After I earned my doctorate, an achievement my family acknowledged with a polite, brief phone call, I poured all my energy into a single, ambitious goal: developing staple food crops that could thrive in the world's most arid regions. It was the Everest of my field. With Ben's help and his extensive network, I managed to secure a small, shoestring grant from a philanthropic foundation that believed in high-risk, high-reward research. It wasn't much, just enough to rent a small lab space in a shared research facility and hire one brilliant, underpaid graduate assistant named Lena. The day the grant was officially approved was one of the happiest of my life. I felt like I was finally on my way, that I had a real chance to make a difference. Of course, I had to share the news with my family. I chose to do it at my mother's birthday dinner, hoping the celebratory mood might soften the blow of my continued commitment to a non-lucrative career. The restaurant was one of my father's favorites, a place with white tablecloths, hushed waiters, and prices that made my eyes water. Rohan was there, looking impossibly sleek in a designer suit. He had recently been made a junior partner at his firm, a massive entity that specialized in corporate and patent law. His primary client, he boasted, was AgroCorp, a global agrochemical behemoth. As the appetizers arrived, I cleared my throat and made my announcement. "I have some exciting news," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been awarded a research grant to start my own project. We'll be working on creating a drought-resistant wheat varietal." A polite silence followed. My mother smiled weakly. "Oh, that's wonderful, dear. More plants." My father took a slow sip of his wine. But it was Rohan who delivered the killing blow. He leaned back in his chair, a look of amused pity on his face. "A grant," he said, the word dripping with condescension. "How cute. That's what, my lunch budget for a week." He laughed, and my father cracked a smile. "Listen, little sis," Rohan continued, leaning forward as if sharing a great secret. "I'm happy for you, really. But you have to understand the scale of what you're up against. My client, AgroCorp, has been working on the exact same problem for the better part of a decade. They have a research and development budget of $200 million a year. They have teams of hundreds of PhDs in state-of-the-art facilities across 3 continents. They are on the cusp of a breakthrough, a patent that will be worth billions. Billions, Alessia." He sat back, satisfied. "So, by all means, play with your little seedlings. It's good to have a hobby." My face burned with a familiar, hot shame. He had done it again, so effortlessly. He had taken my proudest professional achievement and reduced it to a child's craft project. My father twisted the knife. "Rohan is right, Alessia. This is a fantasy. Perhaps it's time you focused on something more stable. Finding a good husband. Starting a family." I felt the air leave my lungs. I looked around the table at my family, at these people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters. They saw my dream not just as impractical, but as an embarrassment. In that moment, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was a cold, quiet rage. And beneath the rage, an idea began to form, a tiny seed of defiance. They saw a patent worth billions. I saw a hungry world. They saw a corporate victory. I saw a human necessity. Maybe, just maybe, the point wasn't to beat AgroCorp at their own game. Maybe the point was to change the game entirely. I retreated into my work. The lab was my sanctuary. It was small, crammed with second-hand equipment Ben had helped me source from university surplus sales. Our primary growth chamber had a persistent flicker, and the air conditioning was temperamental. Lena and I worked grueling hours, fueled by cheap coffee and an unshakable belief in our mission. While Rohan was closing deals in glass towers, I was on my hands and knees, cross-pollinating wheat blossoms with a pair of fine-tipped tweezers. The work was painstaking, tedious, and filled with failure. Batch after batch of seedlings withered and died under the harsh, simulated drought conditions. My grant money dwindled. There were days I was so consumed by doubt that I could barely bring myself to go to the lab. On those days, I would hear Rohan's voice in my head, "Play with your little seedlings." And it would make me furious. That fury became my fuel. The breakthrough didn't arrive with a crash of thunder. It came in whispers, in the middle of a sweltering July night, 3 years into the project. I was staring at a screen of genomic data, my eyes blurry with exhaustion. The dominant approach the one AgroCorp was certainly taking was to try and brute force a solution, inserting genes from extremophile organisms into the wheat genome. It was a sledgehammer approach, and it wasn't working. The modified plants were resilient, but their yield was pitiful. I had decided on a different path. It wasn't about forcing the plant to survive. It was about awakening the survival mechanisms it already possessed. Wheat, like all life, has a deep, ancient history written in its DNA, a library of forgotten adaptations from times when the climate was harsher. My work was less about genetic engineering and more about genetic archaeology. I was looking for the dormant switches, the epigenetic triggers that could reactivate those latent traits. That night, staring at the screen, I saw it. A specific methylation pattern on a stretch of non-coding DNA. It wasn't a gene that produced a protein, but a sequence that acted like a master controller, a conductor for an entire orchestra of stress response genes. The big corporations, with their focus on easily identifiable, protein-coding genes, would have missed it. They were reading the chapters, but ignoring the table of contents. My heart started hammering against my ribs. It wasn't a sledgehammer I had found. It was a key. I felt a jolt of adrenaline that wiped away all my fatigue. "Lena," I whispered, my voice hoarse. She was dozing at her desk, her head pillowed on a textbook. She startled awake. "What is it?" I couldn't speak, I just pointed at the screen. She came over, her eyes widening as she traced the data. A slow smile spread across her face. "Alessia," she breathed. "Is this?" "I think it is," I said, a wave of dizzying hope washing over me. "I think this is it." The next 2 weeks were a blur. We worked around the clock, using a targeted CRISPR technique not to insert foreign DNA, but to simply demethylate that one specific region in a batch of embryos. It was delicate, precise work. We cultivated the resulting seedlings in a separate growth chamber, programming the environment to simulate a catastrophic, multi-month drought. We gave them barely enough water to survive. Every morning, I would come into the lab with my stomach in knots, half expecting to find a tray of withered, brown shoots. But they held on. They were smaller than the control group, yes, but they were green. They were alive. On the final day of the trial, we gave them a deep watering. The next morning, when I opened the chamber door, I gasped. It was like a miracle. The plants had responded almost instantly. They stood tall and vibrant, their seed heads already beginning to swell with nascent grain. Lena and I just stood there staring. Then she started to cry, silent tears streaming down her face. I just laughed, a raw, giddy sound of pure, unadulterated triumph. We had done it. Against all odds, on a budget that wouldn't even cover the catering for an AgroCorp board meeting, we had done it. My first call was to Ben. I sent him the data and then called him, my hand shaking. He was silent for a long time on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "My God, Alessia. You magnificent, stubborn woman. You've cracked it. You do realize what you're holding, don't you?" "I think so," I said, my voice small. "No, I don't think you do," he insisted. "This isn't just a scientific breakthrough. This is one of the most valuable agricultural patents of the century. You can name your price." AgroCorp, Monsanto, Syngenta, they will trample each other to buy this from you. You're not just set for life, Alessia. You can fund your research for the next 100 years. You can have everything you've ever wanted. His words hung in the air. Everything I ever wanted. For a fleeting, dizzying moment, I saw it. I saw the look on my father's face. I saw Rohan's shock and grudging respect. I saw the approval, the validation, the entry into the winner's circle I had been denied my entire life. I could buy my family's love, or at least their respect, which was the closest they ever came to love. The temptation was immense, a physical weight. For 3 days, I was paralyzed. I drafted an email to a top patent attorney Ben recommended. I looked at the market capitalization of AgroCorp and tried to comprehend what even a fraction of that would mean. I could have a state-of-the-art lab, a huge team, an endowed chair at a university. I could have the success they understood. But then I made the mistake of calling home. It was a Sunday, and I just wanted to hear a familiar voice. My mother answered. The conversation was the usual. How was Rohan? He was brilliant. He was about to close a major deal. How were my father's investments? They were performing exceptionally. Then she asked the perfunctory question. And how are you, dear? Still playing with your plants. That one sentence, so casual, so unintentionally cruel, was like a bucket of ice water. Playing with your plants. They still saw me as a child in a sandbox. And I realized with sickening clarity that if I took the money, if I patented the technology and sold it to the highest bidder, I wouldn't be proving them wrong. I would be proving them right. I would be admitting that the only value in my work was the value they assigned to it, the price tag. I would be validating their entire worldview, that everything, even the cure for hunger, is just another asset to be leveraged for profit. I deleted the draft to the patent lawyer. I opened a new document. My fingers flew across the keyboard. I wrote down everything, the full genetic sequence of my varietal, which I named Asha, the Sanskrit word for hope. I detailed the precise epigenetic modification protocol. I included the trial data, the yield calculations, everything. I called Ben and told him my plan. Are you absolutely sure, Alessia? He asked, his voice gentle. Once you do this, there's no going back. This is a bell you can't unring. I'm sure, Ben, I said, a profound sense of calm settling over me for the first time in days. This isn't for them. It's for the farmers in Rajasthan. It's for the families in the Sahel. It belongs to them. My work was never about getting rich. It was about making a difference. My family will never understand that, but I don't need them to anymore. Together, Ben and I began the quiet, methodical process of placing my discovery into the public domain. We uploaded the genetic data to GenBank, a public repository. We worked with legal experts at an open-source science initiative to create an unassailable public patent, a legal framework that ensured Asha could never be privatized. It was a fortress of accessibility. The process took months of careful, clandestine work. All the while, I was living a double life. To the world, and to my family, I was still just Alessia, the quirky botanist, tinkering away in her little lab. 6 weeks ago, we had the final family dinner before everything changed. It was to celebrate my father's birthday. Rohan was in rare form, holding court at the head of the table. He was practically vibrating with excitement. He had just been promoted. He was now leading the final push on their drought resistance project. We're so close, he said, his eyes gleaming. Our preliminary field trials in Arizona are looking incredibly promising. The board is already talking about the market launch. The stock is going to go through the roof. This is the big one. The one that sets us all up for life. My mother was practically weeping with pride. My father clapped him on the shoulder. This is what I'm talking about, son. A legacy. Then, as always, the conversation turned to me. A brief, obligatory check-in. So, Alessia, Rohan said, a familiar, patronizing smirk on his face. He'd had a few glasses of expensive scotch. How are your little sprouts doing? Cured world hunger yet? The table chuckled. It was their favorite running joke. I looked him right in the eye. A strange sense of peace washed over me. The old sting was gone. It was like watching a movie where I already knew the ending. I just smiled, a small, quiet, enigmatic smile. "Oh, you know," I said softly. "Same old stuff. Making progress." He saw my smile and misinterpreted it as defeat, as the sad resignation of someone who knew they were out of their league. He couldn't see the truth. It was the smile of a predator watching its prey walk confidently into a trap. I let them have their moment. I let them laugh. Inside, I was thinking, *, you have no idea. You are celebrating a race you lost 6 months ago. *. The next day, I sent the entire package, the public patent, the verified data, the whole story, to a contact Ben had at the World Food Program. The initial response was cautious, skeptical. It seemed too good to be true. But then they began their own verification. Their top scientists replicated my work. Their disbelief turned to astonishment, and their astonishment turned to jubilant, urgent action. They understood the implications immediately. This wasn't just a corporate asset. It was a humanitarian game changer. We planned the announcement together. A global press release, coordinated to drop at the exact same time across all time zones. A weapon of mass nutrition. And now, there are less than 10 minutes left on the clock. I'm in my lab. My little, messy, glorious lab. Ben is here, and so is Lena. The same cheap bottle of sparkling wine we bought the day we confirmed the breakthrough sits on the cluttered workbench, finally ready to be opened. The air is thick with anticipation, so dense I feel like I could taste it. My laptop is open to the World Food Program's press site. A simple, stark countdown timer is ticking down the seconds. 9 minutes and 47 seconds. My phone buzzes on the table. I glance down. It's the Sharma family group chat. My mother has just posted a picture. It's a selfie of her, my father, and Rohan. They're at that same expensive restaurant, the one with the white tablecloths. Rohan is in the middle, holding up a glass of champagne, his face a mask of smug triumph. My mother's caption reads, "Celebrating Rohan's imminent victory. The final AgroCorp results are in, and a big announcement is coming. So proud of our brilliant son." I stare at the picture. A decade ago, a year ago, even 7 months ago, that image would have sliced me to the bone. It would have been another confirmation of my place as the family footnote, the perpetual disappointment.
But now?
Now, it's just ironic. I feel a final, faint echo of the old hurt, a ghost of the little girl who just wanted her father to look at her blue ribbon. But it's immediately swamped by a wave of cold, crystalline calm. This isn't about them anymore. It's about the work. "You okay?" Ben asks, placing a warm, steadying hand on my shoulder. I look up at him, at his kind, weathered face, and I smile a real smile. "I'm better than okay, Ben." Lena comes over and tops up our coffee mugs, even though none of us can drink. Her hands are trembling slightly. "This is it," she whispers, her eyes glued to the screen. 3 minutes and 12 seconds. The final minutes stretch into an eternity. I think about the farmers I've never met. I think about the sheer, beautiful arrogance of life, of a single seed holding the power to remake a landscape. I think about what legacy really means. It's not a number in a bank account. It's the food in a child's bowl. It's the hope that returns to a community. 1 minute, the final minute. Lena is holding her breath. Ben has his arm around me. My heart is a drum against my ribs, beating out a rhythm of terror and joy. 0, 0:0, 0:10. 0, 0:0, 0:09. My eyes are fixed on the screen. The numbers are huge, stark. A countdown to a new reality. 0, 0:0, 0:03. 0, 0:0, 0:02. 0, 0:0, 0:01. Midnight. The page refreshes. And there it is. The headline is bold, unequivocal. World Food Program announces revolutionary breakthrough in drought-resistant grain. Technology placed in public domain, free for farmers worldwide, and underneath it a smaller subheadline. Lead scientist Dr. Alessia Sharma hailed for generational ACT of scientific philanthropy, and there's my picture, a photo Ben took of me in the lab, smiling, dirt smudged on my cheek. For a second, there is absolute silence in the lab. Then my phone starts to buzz. And it doesn't stop. It's not the family chat. It's an avalanche. Emails, text messages, news alerts from the BBC, the New York Times, Reuters. My university alumni association. Old colleagues. Friends I haven't spoken to in years. The screen is a waterfall of notifications. Lena lets out a sob that's half laugh, half cry, and throws her arms around me. Ben just stands back, beaming, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it, my girl," he says, his voice thick. "You really did it." Miles away, in that hushed, expensive restaurant, Rohan Sharma is on his feet, holding his champagne flute aloft. He's in the middle of a toast. The entire senior legal team from AgroCorp is there, along with his parents, their faces glowing with adoration. And so, Rohan is saying, his voice smooth and confident, "I give you a toast. To the future. To AgroCorp. And to a world where our innovation will feed millions and our shareholders will be rewarded beyond their wildest dreams. To us." As the polite applause begins, a junior analyst at the far end of the table looks down at his phone, his brow furrowing in confusion. He nudges the person next to him. A quiet ripple of electronic buzzing starts to spread around the table, a discordant note in the symphony of self-congratulation. Rohan's boss, a severe man named Marcus Thorne, frowns at the interruption. His own phone vibrates. He glances at it, dismissively at first. Then his eyes widen. The color drains from his face, leaving behind a pasty, gray mask of horror. He stares at the screen as if it has electrocuted him. Rohan's smile falters. "Marcus? Is everything all right?" he asks, lowering his glass. Marcus doesn't seem to hear him. He's scrolling frantically, his thumbs shaking. "No," he mutters to himself. "No, it's not possible." An executive assistant, a young woman with a panicked look in her eyes, hurries over to the table and whispers urgently in Marcus's ear. He just shakes his head, finally looking up. He doesn't look at Rohan. He looks right past him, as if he's suddenly become invisible. "What is it?" Rohan demands, his voice rising with a note of irritation. "What's going on?" Marcus finally turns his gaze to Rohan. There is no warmth in his eyes. Only a cold, dead fury. He doesn't say a word. He just shoves his phone across the table. It slides across the white linen and stops right in front of Rohan's plate. Rohan picks it up. He reads the headline. He sees the WFP logo. He sees the words public domain. Free for farmers. And then he sees the name. Dr. Alessia Sharma. He sees my face. The smirk on his own face dissolves. It doesn't just fade. It shatters, replaced by a slack-jawed, vacant look of utter, uncomprehending shock. He reads my name again, his lips moving silently. Sharma. It can't be. It's a mistake. A different Sharma. But he knows it isn't. He looks from my smiling face on the screen to his own parents, who are now looking around in bewildered confusion. The celebration has died. The room is filled with a thick, choked silence, broken only by the frantic tapping of fingers on screens. His world, so solid, so certain just moments before, is crumbling to dust around him. And then his phone rings. He looks at the caller ID. It's me. He stumbles away from the table, pushing his chair back so hard it scrapes loudly against the floor. He walks numbly towards the exit, past the concerned faces of his colleagues and the bewildered faces of his parents. He pushes through the heavy doors into the cool night air, the city noise a dull roar in his ears. He answers the phone. Alessia? His voice is a strangled whisper, all the smooth confidence gone, stripped away to reveal the raw panic beneath. What is this? What have you done? From my lab, surrounded by the joyful chaos of my own celebration, I listen to his panic. And I feel nothing. Not triumph. Not pity. Just a vast, quiet distance. I take a sip of the cheap, wonderful sparkling wine. It tastes like victory. I did my work, Rohan. I say, and my voice is perfectly calm, perfectly steady. The same work I've been telling you about for years. The work you and Dad called my little hobby. The work you laughed at. There's a long pause. I can hear him breathing, short, ragged gasps. But the patent, he finally chokes out. The money. AgroCorp stock, it was worth billions. You just gave it away. I look around my lab, at Lena's tear-streaked, happy face, at Ben, who is popping the cork on a second bottle. Yes, I did, I say. Some things are more important than billions, Rohan. I guess that's a concept they don't teach in corporate law. I hear a choked sound on the other end of the line. I have to go, I say, my voice still gentle, but firm. My other line is ringing. It's the director of the Gates Foundation. Goodbye, Rohan. And I hang up. I end the call and, with it, an entire chapter of my life. The days that followed were a whirlwind, a blur of motion and sound that felt like a different reality. The story went viral. My face was everywhere. I was the Robin Hood of science, the people's botanist. My quiet, little lab became the focus of intense media attention. Interview requests poured in from all over the world. I was terrified at first, but Ben coached me through it. Just tell your truth, Alessia, he said. Just tell them why you did it. And so I did. I spoke about the importance of open-source science, about food security as a human right, not a corporate commodity. With every interview, I felt myself growing more confident, my voice becoming stronger. The world's response was overwhelming. Donations and funding offers flooded in, not from corporations, but from foundations, from humanitarian groups, from crowdsourcing campaigns started by strangers who were moved by the story. We had more funding in a week than I had dreamed of having in a lifetime. We could expand, hire more scientists, and start a dozen new projects, all under the same open-source ethos. The fallout at AgroCorp was immediate and brutal. Their stock plummeted by 40% overnight. Their flagship, multi-billion-dollar R&D project was now utterly worthless, rendered obsolete by a press release. The public relations disaster was even worse. They were cast as the greedy, lumbering Goliath brought down by a nimble, altruistic David. Articles gleefully detailed how they had spent hundreds of millions to achieve what I had done with a shoestring grant. Rohan wasn't fired. That would have been too clean. Instead, he was sidelined, disgraced. He became a pariah within the firm, a walking, talking symbol of their most spectacular failure. The man whose career was built on being one step ahead was now famous for being blindsided by his own sister. The public humiliation was absolute. His imminent victory had become a late-night talk show punchline. My family was silent for 3 full days. I didn't call them. I waited. On the 4th day, my mother called. Her voice was hesitant, strained, a tone I had never heard from her before. Alessia, your father and we saw the news. We're very proud. The word proud sounded foreign in her mouth, a borrowed word she didn't know how to use. Are you? I asked, my voice polite but cool. There was no accusation in it, just a genuine question. Of course, she stammered. All those important people saying your name on television, the newspapers, I understood then. They weren't proud of my work. They were proud of the fame. They were proud of the external validation that they could finally understand. The work itself was still a mystery to them. There's nothing to be proud of, Mom, I said, not unkindly. I was just doing my job. The same job I've had for years. The conversation ended awkwardly a few moments later. 2 days after that, there was a knock on my lab door. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in person since the news broke. He looked older, smaller, somehow diminished. He stood awkwardly in the middle of the lab, which was now buzzing with new energy, new equipment still in boxes, and a team of new researchers. He looked at it all with a bewildered expression. I don't understand, he said, his voice quiet. He wasn't looking at me, but at a whiteboard covered in complex genetic diagrams. All that money, Alessia. The articles said it could have been worth billions. You could have had anything. You could have been respected. I stopped what I was doing and turned to face him fully. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself, to justify my existence. I just felt a sad sort of pity for him, for his impossibly narrow definition of a life well lived. I am respected, Dad, I said, my voice clear and even. I'm respected by my peers. I'm respected by the people my work will help. I'm respected by myself. You just couldn't see it because it didn't come with a bonus check from an investment bank. He had no answer to that. He just stood there, a man whose compass had been broken, lost in a world he no longer recognized. He left a few minutes later, and I knew that something fundamental and irreparable had been broken between us. But it was something that needed to break. Rohan tried to see me once. He showed up at the lab a week after the press release, unannounced. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He wanted to talk, to understand. He wanted to process his humiliation, and he wanted me to help him do it. The old Alessia would have let him in. She would have felt guilty for his pain, responsible for his fall. But she was gone. I met him at the door. "Rohan, I'm very busy," I said, not moving to let him pass. "I'm not going to relitigate this with you. My work is done. How you and your company deal with that is your business, not mine." He was stunned into silence. He had expected an argument, tears, a dramatic confrontation. He didn't know how to handle this calm, immovable boundary. "But we're family," he stammered, falling back on the one argument that had always worked. Families shouldn't do this to each other. A dry, mirthless laugh escaped me. "Families shouldn't call their sister's life's work a cute hobby," I replied. "Families shouldn't build one child up by tearing the other one down. You're right. We are family. And I'm telling you, as your sister, that this conversation is over." I closed the door, gently but firmly, on his shocked face. And I went back to work. A year has passed. I am standing in a field in the Vidarbha region of India, a place that has been plagued by drought and farmer suicides for decades. The sun is hot on my neck, and the air is dry, but the field around me is a sea of green. It's a field of asha, my wheat. The local farmers are gathered around me, their weathered faces a mixture of disbelief and joy. An elderly farmer, a man whose hands are like gnarled roots, takes my hand in both of his. He doesn't speak English, and I only know a few words of Marathi, but he looks me in the eye and says a single word, "Dhanyavad." "Thank you." He pats his stomach and then points to the field, a gesture that needs no translation. "This is food. This is life. This is the only validation I will ever need." My lab is now the Sharma Carter Institute for Public Science, a thriving, well-funded center for open-source agricultural research. Ben, officially retired, is a very active chairman of the board. Lena is now a project lead, running her own team to develop a salt-tolerant rice varietal. My relationship with my family exists in a state of quiet, distant neutrality. They call on holidays and birthdays. The conversations are strained, filled with awkward silences. They try to boast about me to their friends now, using my newfound fame as a different kind of currency. Yes, my daughter, the famous scientist. She was just quoted in The Guardian. It rings hollow, and I think they know it. I am polite, but I keep them at arm's length. The old power dynamic is gone, and they don't know how to exist without it. Rohan left AgroCorp and, from what I hear, left corporate law entirely. He works for a small nonprofit now, doing something quiet and anonymous. He sent me a single, stilted email 6 months ago. It just said, "You were right. I'm sorry." I never replied. There was nothing left to say. The wound is no longer open and raw, but it has scarred over into something that will never be the same. And that is okay. I have my chosen family, Ben, Lena, my team. I have my work. I have this. Standing in this field of impossible green, I understand that the validation I spent my whole life begging for from my family was a prison. Their definition of success was a cage. And my failure in their eyes was the very thing that gave me the freedom to succeed in a way that truly mattered. I had to lose their version of the world to find my own. Looking back on it all, the lesson I take away is this: your worth is not a reflection in someone else's mirror. It is a light that you cultivate within yourself. There will always be people who try to put you in a box, to define your value based on their own limited standards, whether it's your family, your boss, or your society. They will tell you that your passion is impractical, Your dream is foolish. Your path is wrong. They might even be the people who are supposed to love you the most. Do not let them. Do not let their noise drown out the quiet, persistent voice inside you that knows what you are meant to do. Trust that voice. Nurture it. Because sometimes being underestimated isn't a curse, it's an opportunity. It gives you the space to build something magnificent in the shadows, something so true and so powerful that when you finally bring it into the light, it changes the world. And what I want to ask all of you is this. Have you ever been underestimated or had your dreams dismissed? Share your story in the comments below. I read them, and your stories of resilience inspire me more than you know. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. Remember that your value is inherent. It is not up for debate. I wish you all the strength to follow your own path, no matter how messy or unconventional it may seem to others.